Hi Sagittarius, welcome to your June 2024 horoscope. I know April and May were quite chaotic. We had eclipse season, we had Jupiter and Uranus conjunction, Pluto going retrograde, we had Jupiter enter a new sign. There was a lot happening. So hopefully May will feel a little bit more like a fresh breath of air. We do have Mars entering Taurus, which should hopefully calm down some of our actions and our drive. And we also have, in the second part of the month, the Sun and Venus entering the sign of Cancer, which should also hopefully bring a little bit more of the emotional, introspective energy. Let's start off the month by talking about Jupiter, though. So Jupiter entered Gemini at the end of May, and the first aspect it forms while it is in the sign of Gemini is a trine to Pluto. Jupiter will trine Pluto on June 2nd, so really right at the beginning of the month. And I actually really love that its first aspect is a trine to Pluto. It really cements this idea that sometimes we are afraid of our own success. We are afraid of our own power. And that can sometimes be the thing holding us back more often than not. That the thing holding us back from achieving all of the dreams that we've ever wanted to achieve. Another issue or another aspect that this trine will bring up for us is that sometimes we also need to let things go so that better things can come into our life. Sometimes in order to have a new dining table, beautiful dining table, you have to get rid of the one you already own. So these are sort of some of the stories that may be coming up for you as well at the beginning of the month. And specifically, Sagittarius, because Pluto is in your third house, you are facing fears that you have around communication. You're facing fears that you have around expressing yourself and around being able to perceive things in a more positive way. I think you can be a little bit afraid of that sometimes. And once you face this transit, the Jupiter trine Pluto transit is basically saying the first step in facing any wonderful gifts that Jupiter has in store for you, you need to face your shadow first. If you want to get a little bit more into what the benefits are that Jupiter will bring for you, then I highly suggest watching this live right here. We go through all of the zodiac signs and what they can expect with Jupiter in Gemini. But let's continue the forecast by chatting about the Sun and Venus. They are sort of the stars of the show this month. They move quite fast, so therefore they also form a lot of aspects throughout the month. So you're going to hear them quite a bit in the next 10 minutes. The first aspect is on June 3rd when Venus and the Sun sextile the North Node. The North Node in Aries has been asking all of us collectively to be courageous, to do the scary things, to not be afraid to fight and stand up for ourselves. And for you specifically, Sagittarius, because the Sun and Venus are sextiling the North Node from your 7th house, there might be some sort of a trigger coming from your relationships that asks you to be courageous. It could be that your boundaries are being overstepped and that you need to stand up for yourself. And what's beautiful about this is that The Sun and Venus are super close to being conjunct with each other, and they become conjunct the day after on June 4th. So there is definitely a possibility that if you do stand up for yourself, if you do set the boundaries, that it will have an amazing consequence, an amazing benefit for your relationship. Having the Sun and Venus in your seventh house, it might really strengthen and beautify the connection that you have together. But that's not everything for your relationships, Sagittarius. They are actually also the star of the show during the new moon. We have a new moon in Gemini in your seventh house on June 6th. One important thing to keep in mind about this new moon is that Venus and the Sun are very, very close to a square to Saturn. The square to Saturn will be exact a couple of days later. Venus will square Saturn on June 8th, and the Sun will square Saturn on June 9th. But because they are so close to the square, you will still feel that restrictive Saturn energy. So even though there's a part of you during this new moon that wants to initiate something new in your relationships, maybe you want to initiate a new date night, you want to initiate a new custom that you want to do together. Maybe you want to initiate a different way of communicating with each other. Saturn might slow that down, might make it a little bit more difficult to get off and running. So just keep that in mind. My piece of advice with Saturn is not to get discouraged, to keep in mind that it is still possible to reach your end destination, but you might just have to consider if you can do it in a different way or take a different approach. And as I said earlier, the square will be exact on June 8th and 9th. Venus will be squaring Saturn on the 8th, the Sun on the 9th. So you might continue to feel this restriction, and it might reach its peak even a couple of days after the new moon. I think there's actually something really interesting about June 9th when the Sun is squaring Saturn, and that is the fact that Mars enters the sign of Taurus on that day as well. Mars entering the sign of Taurus does show to me that our actions will become a little bit more peaceful. Our motivation will be maybe more oriented around pleasure and seeking moments of silence for ourselves. So you might not feel as motivated to do things and to start things and get things done. So considering Mars is in Taurus, considering we have the square to Saturn, be super gentle with yourself around these days and just take it easy. Allow yourself some time to slow down and just know that in a couple of days you can pick the pace back up. As soon as Mars enters Taurus, it also squares Pluto. This is happening on June 11th. And this is a square between Mars in your 6th house and Pluto in your 3rd house. And this might be one of the most difficult days during the month. Mars and Pluto can bring some quite deep-rooted things to the forefront, and they're also in a square with each other. So this might be very difficult to ignore. It might really be in our face, and we really have to deal with it. And for you specifically, because it's highlighting the 3rd and the 6th house, there might be something happening with your health or with your routine that is triggering some of these fears that you have surrounding your communication, some of the fears that you might have surrounding your connection to your local community. I really see this as the idea that, you start going to your local gym. All right, we're talking about the 6th house after all. You want to take care of your health, you want to work out, but all of a sudden you start to realize that you feel really uncomfortable with people in your local community, your neighbors, seeing you in that shape, seeing you as somebody that is maybe not very good with their health currently, that's struggling at the gym, and that makes you, it touches a deep part of you that feels really vulnerable, feels really scared. So that could be just one manifestation. Keep in mind that it could also manifest in other ways as well for you. Let's go back to talking about the Sun and Venus. We're done with all of that deep stuff with Pluto and Mars. The Sun and Venus still have quite a few aspects left in June. One of the big ones is Venus and the Sun reaching the end of Gemini and being ready to enter the sign of Cancer. Before they do that, though, at the last degree of Gemini, they square Neptune. Because Neptune is in your 4th house, these 4 days between the 16th and the 20th might bring up any beliefs that you have surrounding your home and your family, the ways perhaps you're showing up as a family member, how you're taking care of your home. And it might especially show you where you're being a little bit delusional in that area, where you might be looking at things with rose-colored glasses. It's this idea that you always looked at your home before as perfect and cozy and warm and loving. And these couple of days make you realize that, wait a second, like actually my home is not cozy at all. I was being so unrealistic with thinking that, and something needs to change. I want to change this for myself. It could also manifest in other ways. Like I said, maybe the way you communicate with your family. You always thought that, hey, I'm a really good mother or sister or sibling. But you eventually find out that, wait a second, actually, I can do a better job reaching out and being there for my family. So like I said, Venus will be squaring Neptune on the 16th. The Sun will be squaring Neptune on the 20th. So around these days, these themes might be especially prevalent for you. After they square Neptune, Venus and the Sun enter the sign of Cancer. Venus enters Cancer on the 17th of June, and the Sun does so on the 21st of June. They are entering your 8th house. So towards the end of the month, you might become a little bit more focused on the deeper parts of you, the parts of you that we don't tend to talk about with others, the parts of you that feel really vulnerable to share. And, whether you're dealing with them on your own or finding a trusted partner to talk to about them, I do think this is a great time with the Sun and Venus in your 8th house to explore them, to not be afraid, to take a look at what's happening deep down there. And especially on June 22nd, this will be a pivotal day for you understanding these deeper parts of yourself as well. This is because we have a full moon in Capricorn. The moon will be in your 2nd house. The Sun will be in Cancer in your 8th house. And full moons can make things clear that previously we were a bit unsure about, or there was some unclarity around. And especially for you, there might be something with your finances that's happening, or perhaps you realize by taking care of yourself, by being independent, there's a piece of information that makes things more clear to you in regards to how you view vulnerability, how you view these deeper, darker parts of yourself. What is your relationship to them? Do you hide them? Do you pretend they don't exist? Do you put up a show for others that pretends that you don't have those parts of yourself? You're all fine and dandy. Really stay open and listening during this full moon and take notes as to what comes up. We have 2 more transits to go with the planet Venus. I know, I told you, she's quite busy this month. On June 26th, Venus is again in conversation with the North and the South node. This time, she squares the nodes. So at the beginning of the month, Venus was sextiling the North node, and now it is squaring it. But just like the beginning of the month, we have the theme of being courageous, standing up for ourselves. This time, however, the trigger is not coming from our relationships, but it's coming more from a deeper parts of ourselves. It's more of an internal trigger. I really see this as a calling to be courageous with what you're feeling. Be courageous with all of the dark thoughts that might be coming up in your head. To not be afraid of them, to not continue to hide them and lie to yourself that they're not there and you're not thinking about them. The final Venus transit happens on June 28th when Venus sextiles Mars. The sextile highlights your 8th and 6th house. How I think this could manifest in your life, Sagittarius, is that all of the work you've been doing, addressing your inner feelings, even the ones that are not so pleasant, is somehow giving you a motivation and an energy, a boost in regards to your routine. It's really this idea that, we have an existential crisis. We face this idea of, what is the point of all of this if we're all just going to die? But when we admit to ourselves that these are the thoughts we're having, we think about them, we feel them, we eventually and hopefully find a motivation as to what life means for us then. And as a result, we feel more motivated to get up out of bed in the morning, to put together a routine that reflects the meaning that we want to give to our own life. And hopefully with this sextile at the end of June, you might feel a little version of that for yourself. But we saved the best for last. We saved Saturn retrograde for last. We should say the universe, the planets saved Saturn retrograde for last. On June 29th, Saturn goes retrograde, and it will stay retrograde until November. So there are quite a few months for you to reflect. Quite a few months for you to reflect on whether you have been working hard when it comes to your family responsibilities, when it comes to your family relationships, when it comes to building a home for yourself that is disciplined, that's patient, that's mature, whether you've been putting in the time and attention there. If you haven't, take notes on what you want to do differently, because when Saturn goes direct in November, you will have a chance to try it again. So Sagittarius, are you excited for June? It's really going to be a wonderful time to be in relationships with others. Doesn't have to be a romantic relationship, but just to be in connection with other human beings. Don't be afraid, especially towards the second part of the month, if some more deeper, darker thoughts come your way. Don't ignore them, embrace them, and just know that they honestly happen to all of us. And see if there's something that those thoughts can teach you about life and about how you want to structure the time you have on Earth. Thank you so much for joining me, Sagittarius. And before you go, one little remark. I am doing a giveaway. When we reach 1,000 subscribers on this channel, I will give one of you a free reading. So if you want to make sure that you get a chance to win, then make sure you subscribe. I hope to see you again soon.